And welcome back, guys and gals. I would like to cover some general rules when it comes to polygon modeling and some mistakes that beginners make when they start their modeling careers. So as you can see on my screen, I have the cube primitive. First thing I want to do, I want to enable what is referred to as wireframe on shader. Currently, we can only see the shaded view of the polygon, and we can make out that it has edges due to its shape. But if I had something like a sphere, it will look spherical and I won't be able to determine edges and verts and all that kinds of stuff. So by clicking this little button up here, which is wireframe on shaded, will give me this dark blue line on top of my geometry so that I can see the mesh as it is without needing to select the object. So if I click away, you can see, and I can still see the edges, the verts, and the faces without needing to select the object. We use this view during the modeling process so that we can make sure our topology is going in the right direction. So with that said, I want to show you something when it comes to 3D shapes. So I'm going to go right click and go to face mode, and I'm going to go and select one of the faces and just press delete on my keyboard. Now I'm going to go right click again and go back into object mode. So as you can see, we've got a dark black side inside the cube and then gray faces on the outside. The reason we have that is because we do have outside and an inside of a polygon shape. If I had to by accident model my entire object and the faces are black like this, my model will not render because Maya sees it as the object being inside out. Now, there are some cases where you won't see the difference, and the reason for that is within your viewport settings inside the lighting options, there's an option here called two-sided lighting. If I enable this option, Maya fools you and lights all the faces equally, so it doesn't look like there's an inside of the face or the outside. They all look the same, but this is actually kind of misleading because there is still an inside and outside. So when it comes to modeling, make sure that you turn off two-sided lighting if you have it on by mistake, okay, so that we can see the inside and outside. Okay, just so that you know. So when you start modeling, you need to just understand that you aren't modeling solid objects. They are technically hollow. So if I go delete this primitive and let's drop in a sphere, let's scale this guy up and move it above the grid. And if I click away, you can see my wireframe on shaded is still there. And if I go to face mode and select a few faces, let's grab like these 8 and I press delete, you can see the polygon primitive is actually hollow inside. If I turn off wireframe on shaded, you can see it's black inside there. So if I had to put a light inside here, it'll actually bounce on nothing and this object won't render. Now I'm actually inside of the sphere. So like I said in the previous lessons, if I get lost, I can just press A so that Maya dollies out the camera so it brings the objects into view. I'm going to turn my wireframe on shaded back on again. With that said, it's just, again, you need to take note of that the objects that you're modeling in Maya are hollow. They are not solid. So if you got that under your belt, you're already doing much better than some beginner modelers. I'm going to delete this sphere now. I'm going to go through a few examples that I have inside of my display layers here. So I'm going to enable the first guy. As you can see, we've got a normal polygon face, and here I got two gray faces, and here I've got a gray and a black face. Because what happened is I used a tool called extrude in Maya, which is one of the tools you use to add resolution to a polygon object or add volume to a polygon object. Now, the mistake here is you can't extrude just off an edge on a face. This creates what is referred to as non-manifold geometry, because if I needed to start applying, for example, subdivisions to this specific object, Maya's going to run into trouble trying to, for example, subdivide it. So let's go see if we just go click this little guy here to add some subdivisions, and as you can see, Maya's trying to figure it out, but it's not really understanding what's going on. And we can see that by this black gray scale that we are getting on our face that's been extruded. You can see here also we're getting this weird gray slash black face because Maya doesn't understand what's really happening here. So I'm going to press Z on my keyboard to undo that, tap it twice. Now another tool in Maya or view that you can enable in your viewport is Smooth Mesh Preview. You enable this by selecting the object and pressing 3 on your keyboard. Now, as you can see, Maya is again showing that there's an error because it's running into the problem that it doesn't know what to do with this specific face. So getting back into my faceted view, or like the normal modeling mode, I press 1 on my keyboard so that I can see my mesh in a non-smooth view. So if I get something like this, I can go in to fix the mistake. I can go into face mode. So if I need to fix this mistake now, for example, I need to choose a face that I want to keep and remove one of the faces. So in this instance, the one face that I want to delete is this guy standing up straight. This will solve this problem a lot easier. So if I go to face mode, select that face, press delete on my keyboard. Now you can see I'm left with a polygon shape with an edge running down it. So now if I press 3 on my keyboard, you can see Maya's not throwing out weird gray faces and things like that. I clearly have a defined outside and a defined inside. If I just turn off my grid to show you again, so I got a black area and a gray area. So I got a clearly defined in and outside for this polygon plane. The next issue new modelers run into, let me just enable my grid so we know where we are in space, is they land up creating a n-gon. An n-gon is a polygon face with more than 4 sides. Now, as you can see, I've got multiple edges on this guy. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That is clearly above the threshold of 4 edges. So what I tend to teach my students, an n-gon, I use the n for n-gon as a no-go type of scenario. To teach my students, it is not acceptable to have geometry. It is not acceptable to have geometry with a face that has more than 4 sides, because this will lead to multiple problems going down the pipeline when it comes to sculpting resolution on here, as well as applying textures and trying to animate and rig geometry that isn't all quad. There are tools in Maya that can help us fix this, but we're going to be going over those tools when we get into the popular modeling tools overview video. Stay tuned for that. The next issue I see students run into, as you can see here, we are already facing a problem. You can see this polygon doesn't understand what it is. The reason for this is I by accident have 2 faces that are right on top of each other. You've got 2 polygon faces that is trying to occupy the same space, which creates what is referred to as a null space or 0 space like error. As you can see, the polygon freaks out because there's literally 2 polygon faces right on top of each other. This also creates what is referred to as non-manifold geometry, because if I had to go to edge mode and grab an edge and add resolution by extruding this guy, the problem is there's technically 2 edges here. If I just click once and use my move tool and move, you can see there's 2 edges. So if I just leave this mistake here, click an edge and start extruding, you're going to land up with one edge that's being extruded and one edge that's being left behind, and then you're going to find yourself in a big kettle of problems. Another way to detect problems like this, other than the viewport shouting at you like this, if we use our smooth mesh preview to see where the problem lies. So again, guys, I use this smooth mesh preview to detect problems and solve problems. I do not use the smooth mesh preview as a wonder tool to make my geometry or make my models look better. It's strictly there to be used as a problem solving option in your viewport. So with that said, if I press 3 on this guy, I can see that this mesh is wrong already because it's making a weird oval shape rather than this polygon plane with 4 sides. If I press 3 on it, as you can see, it stays square. If it pulls weird like this, I know there's already a problem in my geometry. So what you can do is you can try and finagle and select faces in smooth mesh preview and start deleting them to start seeing that your mesh is trying to figure out itself. So I'm going to delete that guy. Let's go grab this small face, big face. Let's see, it doesn't know which ones. I'm going to grab this small one, delete that guy. I'm going to go in here and delete that guy, and then I'm going to go and delete that guy, and there we go. We've got a polygon object that has 4 sides sides and again has a clearly defined inside and outside. That's how we would solve something like this. But again, we'll be covering more problem solving later on in the essentials when we start hitting more complex pieces of geometry. The next example that I want to cover is this, where I've got a polygon face. It looks fine. I'm going to just turn off my grid again. So we have a clearly defined outside and inside, which is what we want. So we'll have a polygon face that is referred to as being triangulated, meaning it's gone through the process of every quad face, cutting it in half and creating triangles. But in this case, it's cut every face twice to create 4 triangles for every big polygon face. The problem when this occurs is it generates what is referred to as a pole, which is this vert right here in the middle. A pole is a vertex that has more than 4 edges converging on it. Again, the ideal vertex would be a vertex with only 4 edges attached to it. The maximum number of edges you should ever have going towards or coming out of a vertex is 5 edges. Beyond that, it creates problems for you later down in the pipeline, which would result in something that is referred to as pinching and texture stretching and all that bad stuff that we do not want. So in this case, it's a pretty quick solve. I can go to edge mode and I go hold down shift, select these multiple edges and just press delete. And as you can see, I am left with a nice quad face amongst all these triangles. So again, if I press 3 on my keyboard, you can see they are pulling weird because again, they've got extra resolution as well as Maya tends to pull towards a problem area. As you can see, the big face here is pointing towards this pole or high valency vertex is the other word for it. So I can clearly see this vertex in the middle is causing problems due to it having too many edges converging on it. So again, if I go into edge mode, I'm going to marquee select over those 4, these 4, and these 4 and press delete and go back to object mode and press 3. And even with smooth preview on, you can see the quads are staying nice and firm. Let's go over to the last example that I would like to cover with when it comes to modeling. I'm going to turn on my grid again. Now here is a very common problem that I've seen over the years when it comes to teaching students. They add a resolution by extruding an edge and by accident the face is upside down. So it's going to lead to problems in the long run because now we've got an outside and inside pointing in the same direction. So if I press 3 on my keyboard again, you can see Maya's creating that grayscale effect here that shows me that there is a problem with my geometry. Now again, this is an easy fix when it comes to this example. I can just go in and delete the offensive face and leave the face that I need for the purposes of this demonstration, which leaves me with one quad face that has a clearly defined inside and outside. So those are just a few common errors or pitfalls that I've seen over the years when it comes to student work that I would advise you to look out for and try to avoid. So with that said, this is the end of this lesson. I will catch you in the next one.